everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Young, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I am really thankful to have Danielle Vaughan on the phone with us today. This episode is going to be really interesting. I have Danielle on the phone because I have been working with her and her team recently on employee engagement for our organization. And something that she did just recently really made me think, I have to have her on the show. And it was just how she acted and responded when she was being the advocate in an employee engagement presentation. And it just is something that spoke to me about her passion for people. And that's why you're on the show. So thank you for joining, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Well, that's a kind of a big question. Where I am in my leadership journey, I think, is understanding how big leadership is and how evolving it is. I think, growing up, if you're that high achiever type, you achieve and check off a box and achieve again and check off the box. And before you know it, you kind of think you're somebody and are praised, for what you've done. And then you get into the real world and you get feedback that you haven't heard before and challenges you haven't had before. And so this journey has been pretty long for me, this leadership journey. I would say that I've really been strongly on it for a little over 10 years. And I'm at the point where I understand that I probably have more to go than I have achieved. But it's really inspiring and fun, challenging, and gives you a platform to really make a difference for yourself, for your family, and for your company.
Awesome. I love that. I talk a lot about that idea of a leadership journey. There's nothing perfect about it. There never will be. There's just like hills and the valleys and all that. And sometimes we're in those alone, and sometimes we're in those with others. And that's why I do this podcast, because part of it is I want people to be listening and going, I know I'm in here, I might be feeling alone, but when I hear other people and their stories and their challenges and how they overcame them, then I can kind of come up with some solutions to say, okay, maybe I can get out of my own way too,
Sure. Yep, understand.
How would your team describe your leadership style? I'm curious.
They would describe my style as, I think, goal-oriented and visionary. And I prefer to be pretty hands-off with how things are done, unless I see that some help is needed. So I guess it depends on the day. If they feel like I'm a hands-off leader or a micromanager, that's just going to depend. But in general, I tend to keep company objectives in mind and break those down into pieces that have to do with my areas of responsibility, see what we can do, not necessarily what's always been done, but, what can we really do to achieve the goal? And a lot of times that looks like something that we haven't done before. A lot of times that looks like something that people have reservation around because it seems very hard. It seems like there are too many obstacles, but I think they describe me as being pretty good at keeping what's possible front of mind and getting the team there and getting a project there.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I absolutely know about you is your level of strategic thinking is out of this universe. And I'm curious, what do you do, or what have you found effective for someone who is kind of more visionary, more strategic? What do you do to bring people along in a way that makes them feel like they're coming along and that you're not 12 steps ahead? Because that's a hard one when you are as strategic and as visionary as you are. What do you do to paint that picture for them?
Well, usually the first thing is to understand where the reservation is coming from. because it's really easy to assume, and it's easy to start sort of combating what you're assuming the issue is, as opposed to just really understanding, well, what concerns do you have? What obstacles do you foresee? And really digging into that helps the journey anyway, getting to the goal. So that's the first thing. But I think also just breaking down the bigger project or the bigger goal into pieces that are really doable and manageable, and giving permission for things to take time. Putting quality over speed is good. So that's usually how I band the team together and bring it through a finish line.
I like that. What I like about that is that even though you didn't say these words, it speaks to meeting people where they are and saying, okay,
Sure.
I know I'm going to probably have to, like, breaking this down in bite-sized pieces, helping everybody be able to kind of consume this new direction. I think that shows a lot of heart, because what happens is if we don't do that, we get so far ahead from where other people are in their minds and in their hearts and everything, that they feel left behind. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So by you breaking it down, so first, seeking to understand and where they think the obstacles are and the concerns are, and then you taking that real thoughtful time to break it down into bite-sized pieces says, I know I can't do this alone. I want you with me
Mm-hmm.
on this journey. So I'm going to do what I can to, help all of us get there. So, I mean, I love that strategy. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're going to need their expertise and their time and their commitment. And a lot of times the concerns are legitimate. It's just that they're also ones that you can overcome. And so it's bringing both of those perspectives together to eventually meet the goal.
I love that. I mean, for those who are listening, I mean, the key here is that we have to meet organizational objectives. We have goals. We have personal goals. Some of us are very driven to meet those, but we can't do it alone. And we've got to find ways to bring our people along. And I think Danielle just talked and helped us with that quite well. So thank you for that. Okay, so here's the thing. Most of us have maybe some specific stories or like a reason why we lead, right? Because not everybody wants to lead. Why is it that you are driven to lead as you do and like you do, and how often you have been?
Well, here at FirstBank, we recently established a leadership program called Elevate Leadership. And I wouldn't say that we created this, but what we've embraced is the concept that you can be a leader of yourself, others, or the organization. Bottom line being, everybody is in a position to be a leader. So that's going to kind of ebb and flow how you are showing up and how you're leading throughout your life. Interestingly, I wouldn't say that I've necessarily had a goal of leading others, but what I do have a goal of is making a difference and having a voice and having a seat at the table where decisions are made, where differences can be made, where things can be improved. And what I've kind of noticed is that in order to do that, you probably have to be in a leadership position as it pertains to leading others and leading the organization. So it's sort of interesting. I don't completely have an interest in leading just for the sake of leading. It's how do I want to make a difference in ways that leverage my talents, my perspectives, and that is accompanied with the leadership.
I like that. And I actually appreciate your honesty too, because I bet you a larger percentage of the people in the world that are like, having that title aren't as necessarily comfortable or even like seeking that title. The idea is they're getting the clue through just the way organizations are structured, the hierarchy, that a lot of things are not possible unless you are at that table, as you so astutely put. So I think that just coming to that reality, but in the end you get in it and you're like, holy moly, there's like people that depend on me to lead them. Like I have to take people places and they have to want to go. And it's just, that's the part that comes in it. But I definitely appreciate your candor and, making a difference, having a voice. It's one of those things, I talk about this a lot on the show with different people, and we want everybody to feel like they have a voice, and irrespective if they have a title, we want them to feel like they are empowered to do things. And so, and I was actually like fully inspired. This is a personal thing related to you, but I was fully inspired by
Christine, which I didn't really fully say, but when we were at this last meeting, it was a great meeting with we were basically, Danielle was responsible for presenting employee engagement findings. And I was so impressed, number one, with her and how she did that. And also with her manager, who's an executive leader, to give her that space to empower her. And so just so you know, you guys are going to be in my talk when I go to Brazil. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Oh, cool. Hey, we're going international.
Yeah, you're going international. I just think, I don't know, I think it's awesome to see it. You rarely see it. So if you are listening in and you are an executive leader, giving your people that space to connect with the executive leadership team, to show what they have, show what they can do, and be that advocate for others and be the voice, whether they have that title or not. Just being able to be represented is really a gift. So just thank you for doing that work. Employees need people like you, so it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, I've only been in human resources for a couple of years. My prior assignment was in the regulatory space for banking. And, just kind of going back to the, why are you a leader question and my answer of, well, I like to be part of meaningful change. And with that comes leading others. That's really where the growth, though, for me has come from, or where it's been needed is it can't just be all goal-oriented and about meeting objectives. You have to interact with, understand, encourage, develop people, and rely on them. Obviously, you can get more done through others than just through yourself. And so it's double-edged, like many things. It's where I'm talented, I think, going the direction of objectives and goals. But it's also been a little bit of a nemesis because the tendency when you're focusing on work is to neglect people, and you can't do that if you want to be effective at the table, like I would like to be. So that's what's been enlightening.
Yeah, and I think this continues to enlighten all of us. By the way, I mean, there's this constant struggle when you are in an organization that has that traditional hierarchy, where the more senior you are, the more that you get a say, and you have more kind of authority to make changes and stuff. But there's that struggle of like, I want to achieve, I need to keep moving in my career progression as a leader. And at the same time, I have to have that balance of how am I also doing the same for my people? How am I being attuned to their needs? How am I moving them through their own career paths? So again, I appreciate, some of these discussions that we have in the framework of what we're doing for the organization of, how do we continue to have people see a vision of their own vision? Let's see, Daniel McCullum, he was a guest on my show probably 7 or 8 shows ago. It was amazing. And one of the things he talked about was breathing a vision into the people that you lead, so that sometimes they don't have their own vision, or they don't even know if they should. And there's just all these things that are going on from a psychological perspective with them. And you as a leader, if you're able to breathe that vision into them, to see what it is, the possibilities that exist for them, even way past what they see for themselves, it actually helps to propel them forward. It's powerful concept. So this is the role we've chosen. And this is what we have to do. Right. So,
Yep. I agree.
Okay. So, there are times when many of us we can think back and go, ooh, I was not so good here. Like, this is not my brightest moment. Can you think of a specific story where you're like, like I just wasn't so great right in this moment? And can you share that with the listeners, being as specific as you can? And then tell us what you did to come out of that maybe place that wasn't so great to become more enlightened as a leader.
Yeah, my probably worst leadership display was probably about 10 years ago. I started to receive feedback from coworkers in the workplace, really about how I was perceived. And, again, that was new to me because growing up, while I had periods of, maybe being popular and a social butterfly, or other periods of eating lunch by myself day after day, what always seemed to be consistent in getting the most attention was performance, right? It seemed like as long as I performed well, people were happy with me for the most part. And I didn't have to spend too much time in that case on interpersonal skills and relationships. So I kind of got the sense that people weren't really concerned beyond what I could produce or how much. And now here I was, people were concerned about how I produced. And so I knew I needed help with that because that was such a new kind of concept to me. And really, I didn't see my style as that much different than maybe others I'd been managed by in the past, or coaches growing up, or teachers growing up. So I was like, okay, I need help with this. So I enrolled in a leadership program through the Colorado Bankers Association, and it came with some individual professional coaching. And I really got to learn more about who I am and how I'm perceived, or how I was perceived, and why, and what I could do about it. And so, that's why I say that's kind of the catalyst for this journey. From that point on, I think the points where I wasn't showing up as my best is whenever I've gone the longest without getting constructive feedback. And then I'm sure to kind of slip back into some things where I forget about the things that people care about. I forget about the little things I can do to show that I'm caring of the people I work with, versus just feeling it and thinking it, but doing it behind the scenes in a way that they cannot see or interpret or feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to get out of that by, reading about leadership, listening to others about leadership, asking for feedback, and really taking opportunities to get, evaluated by others, so you can get those reminders of what you need to continue to work on.
I'm curious to know if during that time, early on when you became a leader, do you have a specific time that you remember, like something, maybe an interaction with a team member, or interaction with the senior manager where they gave you something? I'm curious to know if you had anything that you can think of off the top of your head.
Where?
Like basically a specific example when you weren't that shining example, meaning like an actual interaction with a team member, or an interaction with a colleague, and maybe how,
Sure.
A conflict, right? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can think of project work where, we had project teams, and I would ask questions of very tenured, experienced people. And I am a person who kind of, until a light bulb goes off for me, I don't feel comfortable. I just want to ask questions until I understand. But the delivery can come off like I'm questioning somebody's competency or competence or knowledge. And so just that would be one example of it, maybe delivery not being what I intended, and landing on a person in less than a positive way, or just conversations where maybe a tone was interpreted in a way that a person was offended. So yeah, I guess it being that long ago, I can't think of specific examples, but when the feedback would come in, that's usually where it was around, was how I was perceived, tone, words I was using, delivery. So, I've had to learn to maybe preface questions with, I'm just not understanding. I know you know what you're talking about. I, trust you, but I just want to make sure I understand in case there's questions later. Can you, explain this to me a little bit more, or help me understand how this would work in this scenario, things like that, so people understand the intention behind the questions.
What I love about, obviously I know more about you in the background, but what I love about all of this discussion is there's a ton of courage that it takes to first be open and seeking the feedback as a leader. Obviously, so seeking the feedback in itself is just super courageous. Acting upon that feedback in what I know about you to be a very methodical way is something that's really tremendous. You just don't really see that. I find you to be someone who is, super willing and seeking to be better every day, and to kind of grow as a person and as a leader. So I think those are some of these things that we're hearing. And then the other thing is, when we talk about leadership with heart, sometimes people they go into multiple conversions. Let me explain what I mean by that. Sometimes we get this enlightened period and we change. And then, like you said, we fall back to some like these natural tendencies. And then we keep getting these conversions or reawakenings every time we're being open to this feedback or awareness, more socially aware of what's happening around us. And it just keeps happening, and we go back and it keeps happening. And so it seems to me that having a consistent cycle of, listening to other people and seeing what it is they need from you, whether it's your direct reports in one-on-ones, or whether it's your direct manager in your one-on-ones, or whether it's 360s, organizational wide. But trying to like seek out and find those opportunities to continue to be listening so that we don't fall back into our old ways, right?
Yeah. It's really more of a, at least in my experience, I don't think that I keep going back to zero. But I think you can only kind of focus on so many things at a time. And so you kind of peak maybe where you're just super aware and super on your P's and Q's and just, kind of super outside of yourself. And then the slipping back, I don't think would be all the way back down to where you were, but just some, right? And then you get that feedback or that reminder, and then you can kind of go up again. And so the good thing is, if you're willing, the trend still is upward over time. As long as you're willing to get those nudges again to keep going back up versus keep going back down all the way to the beginning.
It's funny because that's the same process we look at, right? Even in the organizational space when we're seeking change and we want to get that, we put the change in place and we see like immediately a positive bump. And then again, if there's not a consistent reminder, that same exact thing, we don't necessarily go to the old ways, but we don't go all the way back, but we fall back. And so we have to be consistently, I always talk about this cycle of listening for organizations, but it's the same thing for leaders, and constantly doing it and reevaluating, and we all have to do it. And sometimes it's painful, taking time to process it and everything. So this is good stuff. This is definitely a different angle. So, okay, question for you. Sure. Because you do, and all of us, we all just get so busy with projects, and we sometimes just get really disconnected with our team. What do you do? What are some of the ways or things that you do to reconnect with your team when you've come through some big projects and maybe you weren't able to give them the time that you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, it's been huge to just become more aware of what people notice and what they need. So just the awareness is big. And what happens with me is I get in a lot of meetings. I'll just have meetings back to back for multiple days in a row. And that's very challenging for me because it takes me away from what I tend to gravitate towards, which is desk time, work, grinding. And so when those meetings let up, of course, my tendency is great. Now I can go catch up and work. And what I've learned is if I'm feeling like my desk has been neglected, probably my people are feeling like they've been neglected because I've been in so many meetings and been away. And so what I've learned to do is just not immediately go start grinding at my desk when I have that time, but to actually just interact. And so if that's taking the long way to my desk so I can talk to team members along the way, taking time to send notes to people, like, we'll get announcements that a new employee is coming to our team. So I'll send a quick note before that person comes to welcome them, or the happy birthdays, or the, congratulations on anniversaries, or where I might not otherwise participate in a little function or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show up because I need to interact with my people. They don't know that I care if I'm not showing it in ways that they can see and interpret. So it's really become a discipline to find opportunities to interact and then just doing it.
What I love about this, number one, I love the pure honesty and the transparency about it. But the other thing that I love about it is not, the stuff that I talk about, not all of us naturally have this squishy, wishy butterfly thing going on. And it's hard for me too, when I get like super busy and I'm naturally, this is like my strength, but still I also get distracted and then I don't do that soft stuff sometimes, and realizing what other people need and, getting carried away with, like you said, performing a task, getting this particular thing done, and paying attention that the people around me. I love that idea of if I feel like my desk is being neglected, that I'm pretty sure my people feel that same way. That is brilliant. Hopefully people are picking up on that one in a big way. But I think just the idea of it's a discipline. When I talk about employee experience, it feels a certain way up front, but there's kind of, I call it process, but there's process or systems in the background. And then, for you, when you're talking about discipline, it may make it sound more rigid or more planned, But in the end, actually irrespective, it's that you're doing it coming from the right place, and it's producing a feeling up front like it's supposed to. So it doesn't really matter how we get there, as long as it's our heart's in the right place. And the end result is that our employees are feeling valued and important. And that's what you're doing by kind of reshifting your path back to your desk and choosing to go to this meeting versus sitting at your desk. And I think there are probably more people listening in that may have these inclinations than not. And so we're all just trying to strive to be better at remembering our people. So, thank you for sharing that. And that was beautiful. And I will not be forgetting about that desk neglect versus people neglect. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I know I'm running the risk of sounding robotic if I say it's a discipline to show I care, but it's kind of like love languages in that I do care. And I have a tendency, though, to show that in a way that people it doesn't land with them. And so it's just shifting from, okay, well, instead of getting this done for a person behind the scenes, I'm going to go talk to them. That's what they recognize. So that's where my discipline has to come in, is shifting my attention a little bit.
I still love it equally. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. So then, for those who are listening in, let's just say there could be leaders struggling in their leadership or at a crossroads. What would be like a word, one word or two, like a pearl of wisdom you'd like to want to leave them with to get them through their week and, inspire them to keep going?
I would say, the struggle certainly can be painful and confusing and frustrating. But I think what's worse is regret. And so what I would say is really to focus on what's personally important to you and why. And no matter what you're working towards, just stay true to your personal values. That way, really, regardless of how tough the journey is, where it may take you, you may experience some disappointment and some frustration along the way, but hopefully you wouldn't experience any regret if you're really sticking to what's truly, truly important to you.
Yeah, that's good. And that can apply to, leaders have a life outside of work, so it can apply kind of holistically. Values, but then whatever the level of priorities are in and outside of work. And I think that's good. And then you can kind of almost give yourself the grace to say, you know what, this didn't go exactly right, or I didn't meet that deadline exactly right. But in the end, I was sticking to what's right for me. And I think that's a smart way to think about it. I think it's probably makes it easier to, again, I think it's just not to give yourself a little bit of slack, because what happens is we really, leaders, particularly like you said, the ones that are kind of like high achieving leaders, we do just give ourselves a whole bunch of stuff, right? We just put it all on our shoulders, and we seek perfection in everything, knowing that it's not possible, but we do, and so we're hard on ourselves, and then sometimes that comes out as we're being hard on our people too, because we just have such high standards. But I like this idea of just being focused on almost like your true north, your own values, your thing, your purpose, your why that guides you. And if you're being consistent, and focused on that, then everything else should fall in line. And if you feel like things are missing, you just know, well, let's evaluate. And it makes me think too, like maybe, taking more time at the end of every day, 5 minutes a day or something, and just saying, what happened today? How much was I aligned with my values and my true purpose? How much was I aligned, or how much was I not aligned with that, I guess. And then what can I do differently tomorrow?
Yep.
So this is great. Well, I definitely appreciate this. Anybody who's listening in, I'm hoping you found great value in it, because I know I did. I've been writing notes furiously here. And so if you did find great value, please do share this. If you are listening on iTunes or wherever you are listening, you can rate it, you can write a review, you can share it in your network. And the more that you do that, actually, people access it. It's like an algorithm that brings us to the top of the list when they look at a leadership podcast. And then they can hear this great content. So I definitely appreciate you listening in to this podcast. And thank you for being a devoted listener to Leadership with Heart podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.